Okay, so today we're going to talk about balanced nutrition to help you with your workouts with Farrell's. And the whole goal here is to sort of get back to basics with our nutrition. And I just want to take you through some basic steps to kind of get back to because we have heard so many food rules by now. There's so many, expert opinions out there. There's so much on social media. There's so many different things, and sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. So we end up by feeling stuck and frustrated. We are bombarded. We have no shortage of information. So if you've been on kind of a health journey for a while, I highly recommend that you take the advice from just a few people, and maybe that's your coach with Farrell's and then what you're learning about in here and kind of mesh those two together for your ongoing things that you're working on here. Okay, so before we get into the details, I just want to give you a little bit of overview about what I do or how I'm involved with this. So my background is dealing with chronic health conditions and eventually getting diagnosed with a thyroid disease or thyroid cancer, actually. And with dealing with that and trying to feel better and trying to function like a normal person, I was, I got butted up against with my healthcare team at a kind of world-renowned facility that we're all very aware of in this area. And they just told me that the food I ate didn't affect how I felt. And that was the last thing that I'd always eaten pretty well. I'd always been really interested in nutrition. I have a background in biology, microbiology. I used to teach anatomy, physiology. So I have a background in all of this kind of stuff. But I thought I haven't really dug into this because I've been so focused on the thyroid cancer management and all that kind of stuff. And when he said that to me, then I knew that that's where I needed to start because that just seemed mind-boggling to me. So that's when I dug in deep, went back to become licensed and certified in what I'm doing now into functional medical nutrition. And so that is how I'm going to come at these things to help you go through, what you're trying to deal with today with starting your program with Farrell's. So with that being said, if you have any questions along the way, just unmute yourself. If I don't see you, raise your hand or something, and just interrupt me with questions as you need to. Okay. So I'm just going to go through this. And if someone else sees, and I don't know if you can see it, but if someone else sees someone trying to get in and I don't see that, let me know too, please. In case we've got people straggling in a little bit later here. Okay, so Nutrition 101, balanced eating for your wellness. So this is applying to, what you're doing with just overall health, overall supporting your body with your workouts. And so this is going to be really slow. So basically, you don't have to read through all this. This is a lot of words. I'm just going to summarize these. But basically, I want you to look at something beyond the feedback or the recommendations you get from sort of conventional wisdom. I want you to stop looking at like the USDA guidelines essentially when it comes to food recommendations because those were, supposedly designed to help us become healthier. And as a society, we become a lot more unhealthy. And this is why I'm teaching you kind of a different way. And if you kind of remember, this is an old one, an old iteration of the recommendations by the USDA. Now it's called myplate.gov, I think is what you could look up. And basically, I'm gonna, the basic tenets of that are probably okay. But as far as like healing and overcoming things and fueling your workouts, what I'm going to teach you today is going to be a lot more supportive of that. And so I want you to sort of, flip the switch on your thinking about this if this is sort of in your mind, because this is what's been drilled into us. This is old, probably the 90s, but there's been 2 or 3 iterations of this chart since then, and they all kind of are the same thing. They just have a different picture on them, basically. So what we're going to do, instead of having a look at all these groups, and these are blurry, it doesn't really matter, but basically there's 6 food groups is how they classify things. We're going to get and talk about 3 of them. Okay, they're going to be called the macronutrients. So in macronutrients, we have macro means big, right? So it's the big categories of our nutrition. They're going to be fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So I remember, I believe it was, I think it was kindergarten or first grade. I remember being taught about the 4 or 5 food groups or something like that. And basically, it's very political how those food groups are determined to make up one of those pyramids or my plates. And it's all lobbyists and that kind of stuff. So that's why we're getting back to the basics of proteins, fats, carbs. Okay. Within those proteins, fats, and carbs, there are important roles of micronutrients. Those are going to be the vitamins, minerals, amino acids, antioxidants. And we're not going to get into that today. It's just, kind of too detailed for the timing that we have. But we're going to talk about this a little bit more high level. And so I want you to put those containers of fats, proteins, carbs into your mindset is how you're going to sort of plan out your meals and plan out your days for your food. Again, some of these things are a bit wordy. I'm going to summarize them. And if there's anything that you want to talk more about or ask questions about, then, certainly, we can get this to you as well. Okay, it's not going to go. Oh my goodness. Okay. Okay, so what are fats? Also referred to as lipids. You've heard of essential fatty acids. We need to get these from our foods because we don't make them. Okay, we don't make them. Fats are either going to be solid or liquid at room temperature, and they can be saturated or unsaturated. And those are the words that you probably heard of. We've been told that all saturated fats are bad. We've been told we can only have, monounsaturated or polyunsaturated or PUFAs, they call it. But what we need to do is have good, healthy fats because what it does is it helps us absorb the nutrients from the foods. It helps us absorb those vitamins and minerals from our foods a lot more effectively than if we were eating a fat-free diet, which was very much if you were around in the 90s, like in the diet culture, I mean, they had SnackWells, this and fat-free that. Every junk food you could buy practically turned into a fat-free version. Someone had a fat-free version of it, and it only made people fatter. It only made people have more diabetes because they replaced that with sugar. And if we would just have like normal, natural fats from our foods, we wouldn't have, these issues. So we need this because it's a component of our healthy cholesterol. It's a component for the milk production for nursing mothers. It helps our gallbladder function and break down foods and, assimilate those nutrients to our body a lot better. And it's really necessary for brain development in our children. So fats are not the enemy. It's the kinds of fats that people are eating that are. So we don't need to go into the chemistry behind saturated fats and unsaturated fats, but basically some saturated fat examples. If you're eating like real healthy whole food diets, it's going to look like butter, ghee, tallow, lard, coconut oil, and duck fat. Now, probably the majority of people probably have had butter. I would say less people have or coconut oil. I'd say less people have the others. So you probably maybe grew up with margarine or Crisco and things like that. Those are the things we need to avoid, okay? Because those are highly processed and those are trans fats, right? Those are the kinds of fats that actually cause damage to our cells and don't allow us to absorb those micro nutrients from our body, our vitamins, minerals, amino acids, etc. So it's not allowing that to happen because it actually damages the structure of our cells and it actually causes inflammation. If you are in this group right now and you're looking to, decrease inflammation, whether it be you actually feel it in your hands and feet, face, body, systemically, or if you are struggling with blood sugar control and overweight issues, good chance you have inflammation. If you're eating a lot of trans fats, so this would look like processed foods, then chances are if you improve that and eat more whole foods and real healthy fats, you're going to lose weight a lot easier, mostly because that inflammation. So in talking about the trans fats, I just gave out a couple examples here. The Crisco, the I can't believe it's not butter, the margarine. I don't know if you remember too, I'm dating myself here, but margarine was, made from vegetable oil. That's why it was so healthy for us. It was low in saturated fats, but it's partially hydrogenated. It is a trans fat, which will actually cause, like I said, that damage to our cells, and that makes people less metabolically healthy. Okay. So the problem is we have this, if you've heard of omega-3s and omega-6s, because of the more processed and ultra processed foods that most people are eating, at least in our society in the United States, we have a high ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s when it should be more like a 2-to-1 or 1-to-1 ratio. If we just ate and concentrated more on whole foods, that would naturally come down and everything in general would be a lot healthier. But bottom line, fats are good for us. They're necessary for us, but it's the right fats. It's the healthy fats. It's the ones that are not, if you see this label on anything, partially hydrogenated, you know that is a trans fat. Okay. Any questions on fats? The other thing to note is that fats produce, or not produce, but they have a little bit more than double the energy in the form of calories than, say, carbohydrates or protein. So that is why they add up a lot quicker. Serving per serving, they add up a lot quicker to the calorie count if you're counting calories. And that's a lot of times why they've been kind of demonized as well. So we need healthy fats for absorption and for healthy cells. When I do nutrient panels where it's looking at cellular level nutrients, and often I see some indicators that their fatty acid levels are kind of low, and you can see a whole host of nutrients that are deficient because they're not able to be absorbed because the cell lining or the cell membrane has been damaged due to this, the bad kind of fatty acids. So we really need to help support our body just by switching to more whole foods more often. So I know I have some questions up that you guys, I believe, had submitted to Robin, and we can go through some of the questions on that later. But there's a couple of things about meal prep and just sort of planning meals. What I would say for the fat aspect of it, depending on what you're cooking and making, what you're eating, if you can try to, let's say you eat 5 out of 7 dinners away from home and you go to restaurants, or you're buying, even if it's like prepackaged foods like frozen pizzas and things like that, if you just did that twice a week instead of 5 times a week, that is a huge progress towards making yourself eating more whole foods if you're just cooking some stuff at home. And so then you would be swapping out the fats from, the fats that are in those processed, boxed, frozen, packaged foods into, like an avocado oil or butter or coconut oil or olive oil or whatever it is that you're that you're liking or want to cook with. So try to just make little bitty steps, like do what you're doing already and then just make it a little bit better. So that's kind of the goal with making sustainable changes that can actually, keep you getting healthier versus being get on a plan and then being off a plan. This is just think of this as life. Like, that phrase lifestyle changes, it really is a thing. So just start somewhere and start where you're at and just make it better. Just make it a little bit better. Any questions so far? I don't know if I can see everybody on my screen. So like I said, just if you have a question, just unmute yourself and then go ahead and ask. Let me know. All right, so protein. We need to look at protein. This should be very, very, very much important in your meal prep and planning for, especially when you're doing these more intense workouts. You need to fuel your body with protein. And if anybody is on any of those peptides, like the Ozempics or the GLP-1 type medications, you need to eat protein like it's your job, even if you're not hungry, because protein has a vital role in our bodies, especially, I think it's around after the age of 30, we start to lose muscle, we start to lose some GLP-1, we start to lose some of that naturally, and we need to keep our skeletal muscle in check. That is going to increase and make your blood sugar sensitivity better. It's going to help your metabolic machinery work better. So this is why proteins are so important. Here's just a few things, but they provide structure for our cells. They allow your muscles to contract. They're the bulk of your immune system. They make the antibodies that fight against viruses, bacteria, fungus, mold, protozoa, like everything, right? It makes different immune antibodies against it, and those are from proteins. They make enzymes that make your body go, like they make the reactions in your body go. It's all about protein. Transports proteins like hemoglobin that carries oxygen throughout the body. Now, it only provides about 4 calories per gram, as opposed to fats that carry 9 calories per gram. Okay, so it's like you can, if you're again counting calories, which I'm not saying you should. I don't know what they're telling you to potentially do at, with your 10-week challenge that you're starting a 10-week challenge, right? Okay. I don't know what the meal plan exactly says about that, but you're going to want to fuel up on protein. And if you don't have a very healthy appetite, you'll want to kind of prioritize protein, eat your protein first. Okay, eat protein first, get that in. Proteins make the brain chemicals in your body. If you don't have enough brain chemicals, the neurotransmitters, you're going to have cravings, you're going to be binging, you're going to crave carbs and sugar, not the good kind of carbs. Nobody craves carrots or broccoli or things like that, right? So it's going to be all the stuff that will boost your sugar levels. It causes sleeplessness and insomnia. It causes mood swings, depression, anxiety, and it's just this vicious cycle that just keeps going and going and going. If you don't fuel your body with the protein, it's just going to be hard for your body to run efficiently and effectively, especially with these workouts that you are doing. These are, it takes some effort, right? It takes some energy, and you need to fuel your body properly to do this. So proteins can be found in many foods. You get it from animals and plants, right? But animal proteins have the complete profile of amino acids that are needed to make all those things we just talked about. Plant sources need to be combined. That's why you'll see where a lot of cultures will eat rice and beans together, because that way it becomes a complete protein with all the amino acids together. But the problem is if you're metabolically unstable, if you don't have good blood sugar control, if you have different metabolic markers that are out of normal range, the carbohydrates in the combination of rice and beans might be too much for you to do all the time. You might have to moderate the size of your meal with those types of things in it. I'm not saying you shouldn't eat them. I'm just saying you might need to moderate it for a time. So the best sources are going to come from, if you can, grass-fed options or organic options, or like the best quality you can get local is probably best if you can find a local farmer. I know there's a few around here for any of your animal proteins. Wild caught fish, salmon, that kind of thing. I'm not a fish person, so I don't really worry about it too much, but I know that people who are eating salmon and things like that on a regular basis, it's getting harder and harder to find truly wild caught salmon that's going to be much healthier, less inflammatory than, say, something that's farm fed. Sometimes they'll throw like corn and stuff in their nets in the stream wherever they're fishing the salmon, and then the salmon come to it, and that's how they catch them in their nets, and they've been eating all this stuff. I mean, obviously they haven't eaten it for their whole life or anything like that, but that is just something that it's harder to find. Our food supply, you kind of have to work to get true quality foods, which is very unfortunate. So, how much do we need to eat? I'm going to modify this a little bit. We need, this is just like a general guideline, not taking into account anybody's, goals or sizes or anything. But if you're metabolically stable at the normal weight you want to be at, then this is probably going to be fine for you. But if you're looking to lose weight, build muscle, recomp your body, you're going to need to probably eat more protein than this. So the ideal recommendation is that you should have 100 grams of protein per day to maintain the skeletal muscle that you already have. So you don't want to lose your muscle. You do not want to lose your muscle. And probably most people, I'm assuming, are trying to either maintain their muscle and lose fat, or maybe they want to build muscle and lose fat. So their body composition will change. But what happens is, if people don't eat enough protein or don't eat enough, period, and they're working out a lot, burning more calories and that kind of thing, often what happens is people will lose weight, but then they get down to that lower weight. They've lost their skeletal muscle or some of their skeletal muscle, and now their metabolism has been downregulated and slower. Therefore, people can gain weight easier on fewer calories. Does that make sense? If you are losing skeletal muscle and not fueling your body properly, you can really do some damage. I work with a lot of people taking those peptide shots, so I am talking about this all the time, because a lot of times people are just not eating, or not eating for sure enough of the protein, which is very filling. And so they're losing muscle, and they're going to gain all the weight back in not very long. So, same goes for any kind of new workout, new eating plan. If you are super duper reducing calories and you're not getting that protein, that skeletal muscle built up, you are doing yourself a disservice. So don't eat too little is the big thing I see people doing. And I'm just looking at some of the questions here. A lot of people are lacking the protein. They're saying getting enough protein with all kinds of allergies. That's the tough one, depending on what allergies people have for different proteins, if it's eggs and that kind of thing, or dairy, that can be hard to get that protein in. And that's where people may need to, especially if they're trying to figure things out, they may need to rely on some protein shakes. But not all protein shakes are created equal, that's for sure. If you have questions or want a recommendation for a really good quality protein, let me know. So going on to, getting too much protein, can be an issue for some people. If their blood sugar is not regulated, it can actually cause a little blood sugar spike, and then the insulin will follow, and it can just be too much to break down for some people. I see this with people wearing those CGMs. Sometimes, well, 14 ounces. Maybe people don't really eat 14-ounce steak that often, but it can be an issue for some people. But I feel like that's less of an issue than people getting enough protein, to be honest. Most people don't get too much protein. Does anybody have any questions on protein? Okay. Just want to go here, look, see if everybody got in. That's okay. All right. So, um, everybody understand the recommendation for protein, minimum of 100 grams. But to get your ideal protein intake, you want to take what is your ideal lean body weight and eat that many grams of protein. So if your ideal lean body weight is 150 pounds, then you should look to get 150 grams of protein, especially when you're doing more intense exercises and things like that. So I always say it's a range. If you fall short of the 150, you're going to be fine. As long as you're getting that 100 grams, you want to do somewhere in that 100 to 150, or maybe you work to get so that your minimum is 120 and you go up to 150. You just kind of have to work with it. But the ideal is your drop dead deal breaker is that you get 100 grams a day. And if you are, I don't know, if you don't even know how much you're eating and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to get that, what I would like you to do is track the protein that you're consuming now and then get to that, whatever you have to do for that 100 grams. Or if you're already at the 100 grams, how can you increase it? Just work at getting another serving at breakfast, or even if it's another ounce or another egg or something, just one other thing at each of your meals, you're going to be able to ramp that protein need up pretty quickly. Okay, I got a question here. Greek yogurts for protein are fine. The only thing about yogurts that's a struggle, and I look often, if you could do the Oikos Black Label Greek yogurt. It doesn't have any of the sweeteners in it. A lot of them have sucralose. A lot of them have either sucralose and ACE K or acetyl K as well. And to me, when you start to remove those things from your palate, you'll be able to smell them, just by, smelling an item with them in it. They're not good for us. It's like anybody who drinks it at Coke knows that those aren't healthy for us, right? I mean, we know that they're not healthy, and mostly because of those artificial sweeteners. And if you're putting artificial sweeteners in a Greek yogurt to make it low fat or low sugar, yeah, you're getting some protein, but you're not really improving the health aspect of it. So the Oikos has, I think it's sweetened with stevia, if I recall. And so that would be a much better alternative. And better yet would be the Greek plain yogurt. And you could kind of zhuzh it up with maybe a little bit of honey, or putting some fruit in it, or you can squeeze in some lemon to take down the kind of the sourness of it. But Greek plain yogurt is a good thing to use to get your protein up, for like if you want to, like a sour cream dollop on your potato or chili or taco or whatever, that'd be a little way to boost up the protein too, by using Greek yogurt as sour cream. The plain stuff tastes like sour cream. So does that make sense, Tracy? Okay, perfect. Yep, you're welcome. Okay, so let's move on to carbohydrates. This is kind of the big one. This is the one that people struggle with protein to some degree because they don't usually get enough. But people struggle with carbohydrates because they're just everywhere. They're everywhere, and people don't quite understand really what they are and how they're found in food. So we don't need to go over the chemistry of this, but carbohydrates provide energy for the body, right? And all the thing you need to understand here is that all carbohydrates are broken down into sugar in the body. Doesn't matter if it's carrots, doesn't matter if it's a Twix bar. It is broken down into sugar in the body. So it's utilized, glucose is utilized by majority of the cells in our body, and they're either used right away for energy, but if you are bombarding your body with a bunch of it all day long, it's going to be stored in your muscles and liver for later use. The problem in our society is that there's never a time that we need to get into our stores because we're always filling our body. We always have plenty of carbohydrates available to our body, the way that our society kind of is set up for eating. I mean, if you go back to the pyramid, and I won't do that right now because my computer is so bogged down, but that the biggest part in that pyramid, and it's been like that, I think, on every iteration, is to eat grains and carbohydrates is the biggest part of the pyramid. So then people, I think that one from the 90s or the 2000s or whatever it was, we were supposed to have like 11 servings of grains or something like that. All those grains, I don't care if they're whole grain or not, like quinoa or whatever, they convert into glucose in the body. Our society is not metabolically stable enough to handle 11 servings of that all day long, on top of crackers and cookies and donuts and Little Debbie's and all those types of things that our or our society's kind of become accustomed to. All right, so carbohydrates are important. They fuel the body. Like I said, almost every cell of the body. The liver is the only thing that can process fructose. So that's one of the other sugars that are primarily found in fruits. You can find them in vegetables a little bit too, but more so fruits. And so we need to understand that carbohydrates are pretty much everything: fruits, vegetables, breads, grains, seeds, and then obviously crackers, chips, beer, sodas, juice, all that kind of stuff. So obviously, if you were to go through your day, you might you have a huge variety of carbohydrates, less variety of proteins. But what we should be focusing on are these guys, the fruits and vegetables. And, some of these, the seeds and things like that. And then tolerating some grains. Of course, if you're not celiac or gluten sensitive, you can have some of those other grains, or even things like rice in smaller amounts, not as like 3/4 of our plate. Like servings. I think the serving of rice that you get at Chipotle, even, which is pretty decent, basic, clean food, but the serving of rice in there is huge. We don't probably need that amount of rice. So we need to moderate that. So if you're eating a variety of these things, either portion control or making sure you have fat and or protein together, preferably protein. No, you don't always need to eat brown rice. Nope, you don't. It's brown rice and white rice. The main difference is that the brown rice doesn't have what's the called? The like fibery hull on it. That's what they say the white rice is stripped from, that's stripped away so that it's a faster carbohydrate, meaning it enters your bloodstream faster. It's negligible. And if you're talking things like basmati or jasmine rice, that's going to be a lot better. I am not talking about Uncle Ben's minute rice. Okay. I'm talking about rice you cook. Not in a microwave in 5 minutes. Okay. So no, I actually probably buy more basmati or jasmine than I do brown rice. Sometimes I like the nutty sort of flavor of brown rice, but primarily white or jasmine or whatever. Okay, so how much do we need of this? Yep, you're welcome. Yep, you buy it and steam it or rinse it 3 times and steam it. Yep, the rinsing is really good to do. A good way to cook rice. This would be for people who are asking about meal prep and things. If you want to use rice and if you like the like cilantro lime rice or things like that, I put in a 9 by 13 like a cake pan, and I'll put 2 to 1 water to rice. So if I want to make a big batch and then have it on hand and freeze some, I'll make, 4 cups of hot water. I'll heat up the water really, really hot, not really boiling necessarily, but really hot. In 2 cups of jasmine rice, I'll put it in the pan. I'll maybe throw in a little bit of butter and then any seasonings I might want. Sometimes I do the seasonings later. And I just bake it I cover it, seal it really tight with your foil. And then I bake it for it. I don't remember what I do, but it's like 350 oven for say 30 to 40 minutes. And the key is you have to have it really sealed up tight. And then, um, yeah, it's just nice and fluffy. It's not messy, doesn't boil over, like doesn't cause all those issues that happen on the stovetop. So, that's what I prefer to do. And then I will let it cool and then put in some bags to freeze or else use for leftovers or whatever. So that's a kind of a good way to help meal prep and have some of that going. You can put it in small containers. So maybe it's a half a cup versus a cup and a half, which is often like, a common serving. The carbohydrate intake in the United States is almost 300 grams per day, almost 300 grams per day. And so if you divide that by 4, it's been a long day. I'm going to take out my calculator just to be accurate. That's 75, that's equal to 75 teaspoons of sugar. If you think, like, would you add 75 teaspoons of sugar to cereal all day long and eat all that? You know how kids grow up eating sugar on cereal? 75 teaspoons. Your body has to process that with its pancreas, with its insulin, with all the other hormones. That causes a lot of problems for people. Okay. So we need to moderate that, whether you have insulin resistance or you're a type 2 diabetic. If you are, you already know this. If you're type 1, you already know this. But generally speaking, if we're trying to improve our health, we need to moderate that. I think I probably had 75 grams maybe of carbohydrates today, so you might want to moderate the types of carbohydrates and then for sure the portions of it. So again, how much we need sort of depends on any health conditions that you might already have. You might need to check your blood sugars. Like I said, I work with people who wear CGMs on the regular basis, and it tells us a lot of information, even if you aren't diabetic. Generally, this is, again, just a general school of thought, and it's a place to start if you think you eat way more than this. But for a meal, generally, most women should have 25 grams of carbohydrates at a meal, 15 or less at a snack. Men can usually handle a little bit more because they have more muscles usually, right? So maybe like 35 grams for men and 25 for the snack for men. And this will help to keep blood sugar stable. And here's the other thing that's a little bit of a conundrum, you could say, with the materials given to people in the new challenges at Farrell's. Their like corporate meal plan talks about eating 6 times a day. That I don't subscribe to that personally, and I have lots of, there's lots of data out there that backs it up, but we like to start maybe if you're used to eating 6 times a day, in order to maintain blood sugar and improve metabolic health and improve your insulin sensitivity, we need to kind of shrink that down, start with where you are at and make it a little bit better, shrink it down into say 3 meals a day, maybe a snack. But that takes time. If you're used to eating high carbohydrate diets or really processed diets or eating 6 to 10 times a day, which is the standard American way. People eat 6 to 10 times a day on average, which boggles my mind. So we need to stop doing that because that's going to be really keeping you from your goals, whatever they may be. Carbohydrates should always, especially if you're prioritizing protein, you really need to make sure there's a protein with it. And if you struggle with getting full fast, I would always eat protein first and then put in the carbohydrate. This is going to slow down that blood sugar and insulin response. And I'm going to explain that in a couple seconds here too. Just checking messages. Um, Here we're gonna be slow. Okay. So I'm not going to get into this, but you've heard of the glycemic index probably. But basically, foods that are higher in the glycemic index are going to have a worse impact on your blood sugar, your metabolic health. And so we need to eat things that are higher in fiber. We need to have that protein in there. And a good healthy fat is also going to help mitigate that blood sugar response. And I just want to show you this little diagram because this is something, I made this little chart with the blood sugar levels, and just to give you sort of an idea of what I'm talking about with these blood sugar levels and how carbohydrates convert in your body and that kind of thing. But the red line is where we want to be. The green line is where we don't want to be, where most people live. So we're talking about blood sugar on the left side, the vertical side, and then I don't have time on it, but it goes from left to right for time in your day. And this is just an example of what I hear commonly from people. This was true for myself way back when. But oftentimes people wake up in the morning and, if you are eating kind of what we've been recommended, it might be a whole grain bagel and fat-free cream cheese and orange juice and things like that. There's very little protein in that breakfast. But it's a very common breakfast, or a muffin, like a bran muffin, right? Or something that we think sounds so super healthy, but there's very little fat with it. There's very little protein with it. And then the fats, if you're going to the grocery store or the convenience store on the way to work eating those things, they're going to be commercially processed, lots of trans fats. It's going to be damaging to your body over time. So what happens is most people will eat something like that at say 6, 7, 8 in the morning, and it'll spike their blood sugar up. But then what comes up has to come down. So it'll fall back down if it's not supported with the protein and the fat. And then when we get down at the bottom and our blood sugar goes low, what are we doing? That's when we have cravings. That's when we feel sleepy. That's when we feel hangry. That's when we feel irritable and we can't, we might have some depression, brain fog. So if we're at work, then that's when we're running to the vending machine, or we have the candy drawer or the baked goods that are set out in the break room. We keep doing this all day long, and then we spike our blood sugar again, and then it falls. We spike it again, and then it falls. This is where people get themselves in trouble. This is where we get in trouble. We need to stay in a narrow range. When we eat, we want to be in the sweet spot for people who are not diabetics is 70 to 90 for normal blood sugar. That equates to about 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar in our bodies at any given time. And the average American, like I said, has 75 teaspoons of sugar throughout the day based on the carbohydrates they're eating. So what happens, it's supposed to go up after we eat, and it's supposed to come back down into this nice normal range. It's not supposed to be, it's supposed to be kind of hills and valleys, not mountains and crevices. Okay. So that's what you do by making sure you have the good amount of protein in your diet and the fat along with the carb. I'm not saying you should be, no carb or low carb even, just lower than maybe with what you're doing. And then see how your body feels while you're fueling it differently that way. Okay. Any questions on this diagram at all? I remember before I figured this out, I had something called reactive hypoglycemia, where I wouldn't look diabetic or pre-diabetic on labs at all, but I could eat something like say a muffin, and I maybe hadn't eaten anything prior to that, certainly no protein, very little fat, and my blood sugar would go up normal, but then it would drop way down, way down. And that's where people are like, I need to eat yesterday. I'll eat your arm if you don't get out of my way. I will keep hands and feet away. Or where you feel like you might get a migraine, or some kind of horrible headache. Or sometimes people feel like they have the flu. This is a problem. And until you stop until you start moderating your carbs that you eat with the good healthy proteins and fats, this is just going to be a vicious cycle. But it can be done, and it can be done in a short amount of time, actually. So normal fasting blood sugar between 80 to 100, that's kind of standard labs. Ideally, if you're not a diabetic, you want it to be 70 to 90. So you should check your labs and see, kind of where you fall in the last few times that you've had those. If you are diabetic, you want your fasting blood sugar to be, less than 140, kind of something like that. I think it kind of varies between different doctors and stuff. Um, And then we're going to talk about putting it all together. So, how are we going to put your meals together? So, what I like to tell people to do is to start, like I've said before, start where you're at and just make it better. So, depending on where you are at, this is just an example. If you're someone who's not accustomed to eating breakfast, or maybe doesn't even feel hungry enough to eat breakfast, I want you to start eating breakfast. I want you to start having breakfast at like a normal time, and I want it to be balanced. I want you to have that protein first. Again, this protein recommendation on this guideline is just very, very general. I want you to have more that goes along with that 100 grams minimum per day of protein, and then up to whatever your ideal lean body weight is. And by the way, I say the ideal lean body weight is where have you been before that you felt like you didn't have to bust your butt at the gym or starve yourself to stay there. It just felt good. You felt healthy. You didn't have to, eat perfectly or work out all the time to keep your weight at that level. That to me would be an ideal lean body weight. And often it's a lot higher than what people, think it should be. Don't necessarily have to go by the, whatever chart at the doctor's office or anything like that, especially for now. Just start with where you're at and make it better. So, this is an example using those guidelines of the macronutrients, the proteins, fats, and carbs. With the eggs and the cheese, the oil is the fat. Eggs and cheese, obviously, the protein. Broccoli is a carbohydrate. Slice of whole grain toast, obviously carbohydrate. Little bit of butter on that to moderate the release of the glucose from the carbohydrate. You got some broccoli in there that's going to give you some good micronutrients, but that coconut oil and the butter is going to help you absorb the nutrients from the broccoli and from the other foods that you're eating. So I would say if you can only plan one thing, plan some breakfast similar to this. Doesn't have to be this exactly, but first, what's my protein? What's my fat going to be, and what am I going to have for carbohydrate? You can eat vegetables for breakfast, okay? In fact, I encourage you to do that. So try to see how you can swap it up. I know when I first started actually eating a breakfast versus skipping it or drinking like a coffee on the way to work or whatever, I started I'd get up 10 minutes earlier than normal, and I would make 3 eggs. I would cook them in a little bit of butter, probably a tablespoon maybe, and saute a little bit of baby spinach, and then put that on top of the eggs, and then I put it on a little one of those, I can't remember what they're called because I don't have gluten anymore, but those little tiny thin skinny buns, like they're round thins or thin rounds, or I don't know what they're called, but and I would just make a little egg sandwich. And when I started doing that, I had less headaches, I had better energy, and that's because my blood sugar was much better in control. And again, I didn't even have insulin resistance or prediabetes or anything like that. And that started making a difference. It just starts to help with brain fog and everything else. So start with one thing. If breakfast is good for you, then start with the next meal or the next meal and just keep adding from there. If you decide you want a snack, the snacks are about half the size of a meal. So whatever that looks like for you based on the recommendations I just have mentioned would be good to do. how about a protein shake? That's perfect. If you can do a protein shake and you can do it an hour after you get up because of maybe whatever, whether it's your appetite or medications or whatever, um, yeah, protein shakes are fine. But like I think I had said before, not all protein shakes are created equally. So be mindful of that. And if anybody, I can, I think when I send, I can't remember if I'm sending this out to you guys individually or if I'll send it to Robin, but um, I can send a protein recommendation for you guys. Clean, no extra junk in it, just straight up protein, basically. But yeah, protein shakes are fine to use, especially if it's a matter of not eating or eating on the run, like fast food type of things. Each, get a protein shake. That's going to be a better option. Same with lunch. Breakfast, lunch, and dinners are going to look very similar, but there's just some extra, you know, guidelines there. And then, or just another option or idea. And then again, a snack. If you're starting where you're eating 6 times a day now, and you need to kind of clean that up, do what's in these guidelines. So again, the protein, the fats, and the carbs for a snack are going to be about half the size of a regular meal. And then dinner, might be chicken. Could be this detox salad is just like chopped, just a bunch of chopped vegetables like cauliflower, kale, broccoli, um, what was it, onions, carrots, things like that. A little bit of sunflower seeds, and then an oil-based dressing is what I have on that. Let's see here. Okay, so someone asked like, what are the bad protein shakes? So, um, here's what I'll say. I could actually do a whole course in over-the-counter supplementation and protein shakes. But what I mean by a bad protein shake is what is the source of the protein and then what are the extra ingredients. So bad sources of protein because of the lens through which I work. People that I see are not healthy, they're metabolically unstable, they have thyroid conditions, they have hormone imbalance. Soy-based proteins, no, that is not going to be good for the majority of people. Very inflammatory. Rice-based proteins can be a problem for some people, inflammatory and pretty carby. So if you're metabolically unstable, meaning your blood sugar is kind of all over the boards, that's probably not your best bet either. Whey proteins are good for building muscle and things like that. And whey proteins really came on the scene for the bodybuilder population. So I don't think whey proteins are as bad as some people think they're horrible. But they can raise some people's blood sugars more than others. So I would say be careful of whey protein. Maybe test it out on yourself if it causes blood sugar spikes or if you feel different when you take it. If you are allergic to, have a casein or whey allergy, then that's not good for you. The proteins that I prefer because they're cleaner usually, they don't have any excess ingredients in it. If they have an inactive ingredient list like a mile long, I would stay away from it because it's going to cause a lot of inflammation. I like the bone broth based proteins. Those seem to, I don't, in 11 years that I've been doing this, I have like a handful of people that it didn't agree with them. I've never had that, that's different with like soy based or even some of the whey proteins have caused problems for people. So a grass fed bone broth type of protein is probably going to be your best bet. I hope that answered your question. Let's see here. Somebody asked about Herbalife. Okay, so here's the thing. Um, I think Herbalife it's a plant-based, right? I can't, okay, so I did some research on those a long time ago. I don't know if it's different, but I had a lot of people that were using those and regularly, like daily, maybe twice a day sometimes. And they had major, major, major GI issues. And when they stopped doing them, that stopped. So they're very inflammatory for a lot of people, and there's a lot of questionable things in them. But if you're doing it once in a while, and it's not your everyday once or twice a day nonstop, then I think you're fine. It's going to be better than going through fast food drive-through for sure, right? Um, yeah, I can send, you know what? Let me just send the recommendation in here. Um, I will before we get off. I'll send it in the chat and you can access it. I'll give you a coupon code. Okay, yeah, that's good. With the Herbalife. You're not, yeah, I mean, like I said, if you have some, I mean, don't throw it away, throw it in the garbage unless it was causing you major issues. I'm not trying to get people to waste their money, but um, I don't know. I have not seen the greatest things happen for that with people. But again, my population people are usually struggling quite a bit. And so a lot of them are sensitive to things. But there's just some baseline things I don't like in them as a functional nutritionist for sure. Um, Bedtime snacks. Now, if you are someone who struggles with blood sugar, if you are a type 2 or type 1 diabetic, you might need that bedtime snack to help with nighttime, like the dawn effect and things like that happen with blood sugars. And so, by all means, throw my recommendation out of your mind with regard to not having a snack after bedtime or after dinner time, sorry. If you are fitting into that camp, then as a diabetic or pre-diabetic or whatever, then you need to do what you need to do for your blood sugar control. But I recommend doing something that's more soothing, something that maybe helps with blood sugar control a little bit. So cinnamon is known, the mechanism isn't exactly known how, but it can help with blood sugar control. So like warm pears, just not a lot, but a little bit, and some heavy cream, or if you are dairy free, you can do like coconut cream, like the coconut cream from a can. You can heat it up and kind of whip it, and it will be like heavy cream, and then you can throw some cinnamon on it, and that would be more soothing, and it would help kind of balance the blood sugar control before bed. But ideally, if that's not you, ideally, if you can stop eating after dinner until the next morning, that would be your goal. If you did that, you would start to feel lighter, lighter. You would feel like your middle area would start to come down because your cortisol and belly fat would come down. Um, you would start to see a difference in your body composition by doing just that one thing. I mean, I guess I can't say I can guarantee it, but I can almost guarantee it. That's just a fact. But again, if you have known blood sugar issues, you're a diabetic, then that might be something you don't do. Okay, so basically it's simple. It's just not always easy. I don't know where the words went on that, but so make slow, sustainable changes. Start with the least stressful meal, like breakfast or dinner or whatever, and just make your breakfast awesome. And then go to lunch and then make those awesome, and supportive of your goals. And then try to just move yourself to eating more whole foods most of the time. And that will get you well on your way to, improving your symptoms and achieving your goals with what you're doing at Farrell's, and then overall, because you want this to be sustainable, um, ongoing. So I'm gonna type in that link for you. If you have any questions, you can ask. Tracy said. So loving spicy black bean burgers for protein, no bun, but of course fried in butter. Um, no, I think as long as you can tolerate the carbohydrates from the black beans, and you're putting, because there's carbohydrates and protein in beans, of course. as long as I think the butter will help mitigate some of that blood sugar spike. So, I mean, if it's like a ton of butter, maybe you'd want to back off on that. So if it's just like normal butter normal amount that you would need to fry it, it's probably fine. Um, let's see, maybe if you have some other salad type vegetables like, greens and cucumbers and things like that, that will give you some more fiber, that can help slow that process of blood sugar stuff too, blood sugar issues as well. Let's see here. Yeah, I don't know why we're having such issues. Um, so I'm going to type this in here for the protein. Okay, so there's the link to get it. And then there's chocolate and there's vanilla. And you would search, okay, thank you. Thank you, Angela. And I don't know if I can send the PowerPoint to Robin and see if she wants to give it to you guys. That's totally fine. And then the protein is the PPP CHC for chocolate and then PPPBAM for vanilla. And then there is a coupon code that you can use ongoing. Once you create an account in there, you can, oh, I'm sorry, I was putting that to just one person. The coupon code is here, but I'll have to copy the other things to everyone. Mm, okay. Aaron, did you get that link?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so everybody, I just sent the link. It should work. And then sorry about that. Everything is jumbled today. So I will say there's been some back order on this protein because the raw materials didn't pass their test specs. They're very particular about creating a product. So, which is partially why I like them and use this product so much is because they're super picky about the quality. So there is the same version of the one that I just sent. But I can't remember the name of it. And again, I can't load it right now. It's like grass-fed bone broth protein, and it's in their sport line. And it's the same protein, but it just is in a different container because it's actually certified that athletes can use it, like in sports that are in competition, like D1 athletes or whatever, that it's certified and saying there's no performance enhancing stuff in the protein. So that's if you ever see the regular one out of stock, you can check that one. It's the same thing. It's just um a different label because of the sports line. I hope that made sense. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do, yeah. Are you familiar with what Farrell sells as far as whey protein? Or I'm not even
I'm
sure that
not. I didn't know they did,
I'm
actually.
not sure that they do. It's only been my second day there today, but I don't know if I know they do sell some supplements there and stuff. And I just didn't know what your thoughts were
I
on them.
believe they do have protein there, Aaron, on their shelf, but I don't know
Okay.
what it's like compared to all other things.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've given this recommendation maybe to Robin before. Like she's aware of what I use and that kind of stuff, but I don't, I mean, obviously they have a business, so they're going to be, using their stuff. I honestly don't know anything about it, but I could look it up and give my 2 cents on it. But just the whole thing is that most people who are struggling with whatever it is they're struggling with, everybody has kind of their own goals, right? And if we're continually fueling our bodies with things that we think are healthy and they're labeled as such, they're labeled healthy, they look all clean and healthy, but we really don't know what our bodies need, we're still just sort of perpetuating that inflammation that might be happening in our bodies, that got us to where we are, to start. So that's like I said, my lens that I work through is that majority of people that come and work with me are not well, right? They're not well. And so I'm super duper picky. And part of it is because of how I came into this. I was so sick, and I had to be really rigid and very, very picky about the stuff that I used and consumed. And that's sort of what I project on the people that I work with. So that is my bias. That's the lens that I'm looking through. So you can take that as you wish, just, take it as it applies to you, but that's where I'm coming from, just so you know. Any other thoughts or questions? Um, I was just gonna look at the list again. I don't know if any of you are people who filled this out, but like what is your biggest struggle with nutrition? If anybody has anything that I didn't touch on that maybe filled this out and had an answer in there, because obviously I'm not going to call anybody out, plus I don't have their names on this form anyway. Now would be a good time to get some
I have a
clarification.
question.
Yeah.
My name is Alana, by the way.
Hi,
Uh,
Alana.
I just have a quick question about cheese because on the what they gave us for a food list and things, it's really not on there. Like what are and I noticed on your one thing you said 1 ounce of cheese. So where does cheese fall into things? I mean, it's dairy, but
Yeah, so I guess I would start out with, do you know or do you think or have you had experiences with cheese that cause any issues? A lot of times it's not that it's the dairy, like the lactose, the sugar in dairy. It's usually, if it causes issues, it's the casein, it's the protein, and or whey sometimes causes problems. But usually how I see that manifest is if people have like itchy ears, gunky throat, watery eyes, runny nose, like the postnasal drip kind of thing, after eating, consuming dairy, it's kind of like a delayed reaction almost, or swelling. Sometimes people get maybe some bloating, but more like swelling in the hands and feet. If you think that is you, then I would moderate how much dairy or maybe even pull it away for a while altogether. But generally speaking, depending on what it is, it can count as fat. If you're talking about like an ounce of cheddar cheese, that's going to be, I think, roughly like 5 to 7 grams of protein. There's going to be some fat in there too. So it's a combo, between fat and protein is how I would look at it. But I would just really think about if you're going along your way and you're feeling like you're making progress, but not really how you want to, and you notice, or people in your family are like, why are you clearing your throat all the time or whatever? That's one thing I hear a lot. It might be something to consider pulling out and seeing if that would improve your progress or your health. So that's just what I see on a regular basis anyway. Anything
thank
else?
you.
Yeah. Um, People ask about water intake. I mean, if you're working out lots, you want to make sure you're getting that in. Kind of the general recommendation is half your body weight in ounces, right? That's just sort of again, a place to start. But I think more important is that you can drink all the water in the world, but if you don't have the electrolytes from the foods that you're eating, electrolytes are minerals, so you might need to supplement, maybe if you're working out really hard, especially if it's in the warmer months, which those are gone for a while now, but you might want to incorporate electrolytes specifically on those heavier workouts. If you're someone who works outside all day, like does, landscaping or something and does these workouts, you really want to probably drink electrolytes too, because electrolytes are what'll actually hydrate you. You can drink all the water in the world. If that fluid isn't getting into your cells, you're not going to be hydrated, no matter how much you're drinking. You could drink 10 of these, and if it's not getting into your cells, it doesn't really matter. So that's where that comes into play with the electrolytes. So again, listen to your body, pay attention to it. If you're hungry all the time, are you hydrated? Think of that first. Do you have headaches? Are you hydrated? Just ask yourself those questions as you kind of go on your way. All right. Anything else? All right. Well, thanks for being here, and I'll send this to her so she can have a replay to send out to you guys. And you're welcome, Tracy. And I will have to probably clean up my slides a little before sending them out, but I will get those to you guys as well. All right.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you guys, and maybe we'll see you around. All right, take care. Bye.